billions of worlds we know nothing about. Let there be one. Yes, lit by a yellow star. A Kryptonian cellular structure will positively drink in the radiation. He will be that world's man of tomorrow. Goodbye, my son. Today on the Comic Book Report, Mark Waid's Superman Birthright, the Deluxe Edition. Stick around and check it out. Greetings all, my name is Dominic and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today, at long last, we're taking a look at one of my favorite Superman origin stories with Superman Birthright by Mark Waid and Leinil Francis Yu. This deluxe edition from DC Comics just recently got released, and if you want a copy, you can pick up yours at our channel sponsor, Organic Price Books. Use my code, TheComicBookReport, at checkout for $2 off your order today. If you use my affiliate link or codes, I will earn a small commission at no additional charge to you, and it's a great way to support the channel. Thank you for considering. Now let's go ahead and get started with today's review. First, some quick facts about today's collection. The issues in this volume were written by Mark Waid and illustrated by Leinil Francis Yu. The issues in this volume were published by DC Comics beginning in 2003. The volume itself collects Superman Birthright issues 1 through 12. And finally, this oversized hardcover comes in at 304 pages. At this time, I'd like to issue a general spoiler warning. I will be flipping through the contents of today's collection and commenting on plot points throughout. You've been advised. Okay, and here's our first look at that Superman Birthright Deluxe Edition from DC Comics. A couple things to note about this edition. The one I have here is actually the direct market cover. I will go ahead and put up a picture of the standard cover so you can compare. I personally prefer the direct market cover myself, but they're both outstanding covers by the looks of them. As far as the spine work goes, you can take a look here before we go ahead and proceed to the back cover. As we make our way to the back cover, I will say one of the details I really enjoy is the Superman logo on the back cover actually has a different texture than the rest of the dust jacket, which is again just an added little feature to this collection that I can just tell this was made with love. Just love the dust jacket. We get to see little bits of Krypton here. And speaking of that dust jacket, I will take a moment to just show the dust jacket again by itself. I don't know if you could tell from my earlier video of it, but this is actually a wraparound dust jacket, which I really love. I'll go ahead and open that up for you so you can see all the detail work here. Just a really beautifully made dust jacket. There it is right there. I'll go ahead and pull out the little end tabs so you can see just how much this image wraps around. You don't always see dust jackets like this. I just think it was made really nicely. And then we'll go ahead and transition to the under the dust jacket artwork, which I also really love. It's just a nice print of Superman, but this itself is also a wraparound cover with, of course, the title information and stuff on the spine again reproduced. I just really like it. I can tell that this edition was just made with a lot of care, and I love all the artwork throughout. It's really, really nice. Let me go ahead and flex open the hardback so you can see that wraparound hardback that I just mentioned. Really cool, powerful picture of Superman. Love it. What a great print here. Very well done, DC. And while I really do love this edition, the couple drawbacks I have is that they are matte pages. The paper stock is matte, not glossy, and it's a glued binding, which I'll show you here. The binding is fine. There's a little bit of gutter loss. I would have personally preferred a glossy print paper stock and sewn binding. Other than that, though, a really well-made oversized collection. I know DC has really preferred the matte paper in a lot of their collections recently, but I would have loved to see glossy for this deluxe edition. The trade paperback I had, which was an older collection, was glossy print pages, and there is something about it that I think the image just pops a little bit more, but this matte paper is still a wonderful reproduction. I will compare, obviously, the sizing and a little bit of the artwork from the trade paperback collection I had, so you can have a reference for yourselves. There you can see some of the art reproduced. I definitely prefer this almost omnibus-sized, oversized edition. You just see more of the image, but I think the glossy print just pops a little bit more. Maybe it's all in my head and just a preference thing, but at any rate, that is what you get here, and I still really love this edition. And with all of that exterior work out of the way and all the comparisons done, we can finally dive into the collection proper. We're treated to these beautiful, like, space, starry night sort of end pages. They also use these pages as kind of interstitial filler between certain issues or things like that. Again, just an added feature of this edition that I think just really make it pop and really make it feel that, that deluxe feel, that premium edition feel. Really happy that this finally saw a deluxe oversized print. Now that we've talked about the formatting and the edition itself, let's go ahead and switch to the actual content of this book, the actual narrative, the actual artwork. What can you expect from Superman Birthright? Well, if you've never read Superman Birthright, right from the go, I could definitely tell you that this is another retelling of the Superman origin story, but it is one of my favorites. The story itself picks up as Jor-El and Laura get ready to send their only son Kal-El from the world of Krypton as it's dying and falling apart, in the hopes that he will have a future somewhere among the stars. We know, of course, that baby Kal-El is Clark Kent, grows up to be Superman when his little jettisoned spacecraft lands in Smallville, Kansas. Having that first issue mostly set on Krypton, though, was a ton of fun and really showcased what this artist, Leinil Francis Yu, was really capable of. We had all of these alien environments, alien technology, alien cultures, and dress that were all just captured so well by this author. I really had that alien feel to it and just really got me excited for what this collection would include. I will say I've read this book now 2 or 3 times. This was my first time in this oversized format, but every reading I've just really enjoyed this story, and this time was no different. After that opener on Krypton, we fast forward quite a bit until Clark is a young adult and he's out in the world trying to find his place, trying to get involved. He has that reporter feel already, even though he's just kind of doing his own thing, writing up little stories on blogs or selling kind of freelance, and you just get this feel that he's just trying to find his way in the world. I think in this respect, it kind of reminded me of some of the opening scenes from Man of Steel, that film from a few years back, where he's just kind of adrift and figuring things out. I do think that this Superman incarnation is more than the Man of Steel one, where we still see him getting involved with humanity and the people around him, trying to understand the world that is his world, even if he's not from there initially. And I really love this aspect of him. You see his compassion, you see his attention to detail, and you see him wanting to help. This is still an era where he's kept his powers a closely guarded secret, but hey, sometimes it gets out, and especially when things get violent or he has to intervene. So that early issue or so when they're in Africa, we have him trying to help this group of this tribal leader who's trying to introduce democracy for this people group in Africa in a corrupt political system. Things get kind of out of hand, but again, we get to see Clark finding himself and being Superman before the cape and tights. And I think it's such a powerful and important issue or two, kind of establishing the character. And that is something that I think that this story does exceptionally well, is that this is a character-driven narrative that is really a character study on Clark Kent as he is finding himself and figuring out where he stands. Because while this is a Superman origin story, it is also a coming-of-age story. The title Birthright is perfectly apt in that he's trying to figure out where he comes from, where he stands, what his purpose is for, and what his legacy is going to be. Who is this man? He's a son of 2 worlds, both Krypton and Earth, and who does that make him? What is his destiny? What is his fate? What is in him and in his nature, and what is his purpose? And I think it's interesting because at the beginning of the story, he knows he's alien, but he doesn't know anything about his home world. He doesn't know it's Krypton. He doesn't know all of these things. He has sort of a tablet thing that came with the ship that he's able to eventually unlock and see cultural dress and customs and creatures and places from his alien world, but he doesn't have any translation. He doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't have the scope or breadth of it, but he's deeply in search of what those answers are and what he can find. And I really love that, and that's where the story really begins. After that, we have him sort of moving to Metropolis, finding work at the Daily Planet, meeting characters like Perry White and Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen, just mainstays in the Superman mythos. And I think that this was all handled really well. Again, from this point, it really starts to feel more like a traditional Superman origin story, and I am here for it. Another really key sequence of characters in this are the Kents, John and Martha, his, raising parents, even if they're not his birth parents. And so we have a lot of scenes in Smallville. them kind of trying to help him with the suit and trying to figure out his role as Superman, his disguise as Clark Kent, things like that. But we have some complicated relationships. We have Martha Kent being just the ever-supportive, doting mother who is kind of an alien fanatic in her spare time, which I thought was a funny wrinkle. But we also have John Kent, who is very much like, keep it secret, you're my son, kind of not a fuddy-duddy, but really kind of stern in some ways, and we have some really amazing father-son dynamics and breakthrough and kind of healing as he adapts to having a more father-adult-son relationship with Clark and kind of learning what his role is as his dad, even if he's not his birth father. And so I love that they explore all those things. Again, it all thematically fits with that birthright theme and what's his nature and where did he come from. And I really love that exploration. The other key component to this storytelling, in addition to being a coming-of-age Superman origin story, is at the heart of this as well. It is a Superman versus Lex Luthor story. And I think that the incarnation and depiction of Lex is also one of my favorites in the character's history. For fans of the television series Smallville, of which I am a big one, there will likely be a lot of comparisons between this Superman Birthright and the storytelling found in Smallville. Because like in Smallville, Superman Birthright treats Lex Luthor and Clark Kent as, hey, they had a history in Smallville. They were once friends, turned rivals, turned arch enemies. They have a couple different wrinkles. It's not like Clark and Lex in Smallville, but this is one of the closest comic book adaptations of that kind of dynamic that I've ever seen. And I think that that also really lends to a lot of the dynamics we see explored throughout this volume, and it adds another layer to the dynamics between Clark Kent and Lex Luthor. Because coming of age, Lex Luthor was in Clark Kent's life back in Smallville, Kansas, back at Smallville High, and I think that that was a really fun facet of this. We have young Lex Luthor sort of alone in the world, being a genius, feeling like he is on a planet of monkeys when he's the only smart one in the room. And so there's this weird connection that he has with Clark because Clark is also truly alien, even if Lex doesn't know it. And so there's this weird kind of unity between them, even if it's unspoken, even if it's subconscious, and it connects them to each other. Lex, of course, is sort of the darker edge of this, where he's disgruntled, he's mean, he has the kernels of everything he will be as a supervillain one day, but there's still this friendship there and this kind of kindred spirits, even though they are so different. Of course, their friendship was not to last, and there's an issue that's one of my favorites in the collection where we actually have Lex using kryptonite to power this machine that he believes will sort of open a window into this other world where he can figure out things like alien technologies and all sorts of things like that. The experiment goes horribly awry. He misinterprets Superman, or, at the time, Clark Kent's pain from the kryptonite as him dismissing him like everyone else in the world. He feels betrayed, throws Clark out of this workshop laboratory he has. There's a huge explosion involved. Clark loses consciousness. Lex is kind of horrifically burned, which is why he has no hair. And they don't see each other again until the present day, where Lex Luthor is this crazy business magnate, just genius level inventor, man of the city kind of thing. And Clark Kent is just starting to dabble in becoming Superman. Right away, they're at odds because there can only be one at the top of the pyramid, and it has to be Lex in Lex's eyes. We are all also kind of guessing throughout this. Does he know that Superman is Clark Kent, or does his hubris not allow him to see that? And how is there that connection there? And Clark is kind of mystified that Lex even pretends not to know him. But it's just a really interesting dynamic. Like I said, for fans of Smallville, there will definitely be some reminiscence there, and I really love seeing that. I think that that was such a special added layer to this book and this storytelling that I don't always see played out in the Superman canon, but I think it was better for it, and I think that this is such an effective Superman Lex Luthor story because of it. Some of the kind of story elements of it are essentially Superman stops one of Lex Luthor's plans and ties this villainous plot to Lex Luthor. Lex kind of deflects and denies it and kind of gets away with it, but ultimately this kind of proves the impetus and the catalyst for Lex Luthor just going 100% against Superman, trying to stop him, trying to turn the whole world against him. Because again, this is the emergence of Superman, and it's very much, do the people trust him? Is he actually there for their best interests? Is he there to save them? And basically Lex outs him as an alien. He puts all this mistrust and sows all this fear into the community. He flows down all these fear-mongering headlines in the newspapers and kind of turns Metropolis against Superman. In addition to that, he engineers this scheme where he basically makes it look like there's an alien invasion from Kryptonians coming, and that Superman was actually the kind of like harbinger and the front runner and kind of the emissary that came first to kind of scout and proclaim and kind of lull them into a false sense of security before this invading army shows up. And I think that that was a really effective kind of note. It reminds me again of the Man of Steel film a little bit. But I think it was just really well done. And we have Superman really trying to prove himself, feeling like such an outsider, and everyone turning against him. And when the pressure's on, who is this character? What does he stand for? Where did he come from? And how does that inform how he acts and what he chooses to do? And of course, he chooses to be Superman. He chooses to save the day. He chooses to defend the people that have turned against him. And we just get to see him emerge as this heroic figure that we all know he is. Ultimately, he stops Lex Luthor, and he establishes himself as Metropolis's premier hero, and the day is saved, yay! So again, this is kind of a paint-by-numbers story in a lot of ways. It is a Superman retelling. It is a Clark Kent versus Lex Luthor story. But to simplify it beyond that would be a mistake, because even though it follows a common story thread for a Superman story, it's so much more than that. Like I said, thematically, that kind of idea of what is his nature, where does he come from, and who is he, the coming-of-age dynamics are just executed masterfully. I also think the dynamics between Lex Luthor and Clark, as I mentioned, are really enriching to the story. The character development and dynamics with his parents and Clark are also just really enriching and wonderful, and an essential ingredient to this story. I also love the depiction of Lois Lane. We have in this incarnation of her all the grit and gumption that make that character such a standout, and I love how they portrayed her in this. Jimmy Olsen was also a lot of fun, some good courage there. And again, overall, this was just treated really well. You can tell that this was probably a passion project for those involved because there is so much heart here. And I don't know how to describe it other than that. It's almost impossible to put down. It is an absolute page turner, and it is absolutely character driven. I do want to take a moment now to transition from the sort of narrative storytelling elements of this story to the more artistic ones with Leinil Francis Yu's artwork throughout this book. I am absolutely awed by what they were able to accomplish in this series. I think one of my favorite facets of it is because with all the settings we see, from Krypton to Metropolis to Smallville to Africa, everything really is so immersive and so distinctive. The artist really has this just wonderful gift with just set of place and setting and detail that every scene I felt so immersed to where that thing was set. It didn't blend in. They weren't lazy. They were really thorough in a way that I was totally immersed. And I love that in an artist. I love with all of these different locales that everything felt distinctive, interesting, and had enough details that you were just glued into the place. I feel like if they were in a room, I understood the layout of the room. If they're out in the wide open area, I felt like I had a feel for the area. It was just so well done in that way. As far as the character models go as well, I think that there were so many distinctive characters, and I really loved that. They didn't all look the same. They all had a different sort of posturing and look to them, and I loved that. I think that with Lex, you got that depiction of that kind of madness, but also that sort of strength, and I love with the Kents, there was that kind of wary but warmth emanating from them with their concern for their son, but also that deep, abiding love for their boy. I really love also the depiction of Superman. I think one of the biggest standouts about how they depict Superman is that we understand his sense of power and how imposing that is. I feel like some Superman artists almost make his character model a little softer, or in such a way that you get the sort of benevolent, like high on a pedestal sort of hopeful nature of Superman, but you don't get that imposing sense of strength and grit that we get from Leinil Francis Yu's Superman. There was this level to him that when he's deflecting bullets or standing in front of someone or activating his heat vision or glaring, that part of me was a little afraid of him in a good way. And I think that kind of just interpretation of the character really went a long way in selling kind of the fear the people of Metropolis would feel about this man who was so imposing. Even though he's showing his face in bright primary colors and smiling, the strength that just radiates off of him is kind of threatening in some ways. And I think that that also just conveys his sense of power, that Superman is not a safe figure. He is a powerful figure and a good figure, and there is a difference. And I love that kind of just strength that they gave this character model. I was really impressed by it. I think that we also really get a good juxtaposition between that and the Clark Kent guys, how the sloping of the shoulders and the sort of fuddy-duddy nature and the glasses, we really can believe that these are different characters, and I think that that was expertly done. One of my favorite images as well with how they depicted Superman is his baby blue eyes. There's this moment where his mom says, hey, it doesn't matter what you do, if they see your eyes, people are going to know you're Superman because those eyes are not like any others on this planet. So we give you these glasses to kind of dull the sheen of your eyes, to dull that color so that people won't see it. Again, the artwork throughout, that was just one aspect of it, but it was a standout all the way through. Very well done in this collection. And with those few extras at the back, that is Superman Birthright, and now all that's left is to give this collection a grade. With outstanding and detailed character illustrations throughout, coupled with one of my favorite retellings of the Superman origin story, and one of the best Lex Luthor Superman dynamics I've ever read in the pages of a comic book, the Comic Book Report is happy to give Superman Birthright, the Deluxe Edition by Mark Waid and Leinil Francis Yu, an A-. For me, this is an absolute must-read Superman story. I would recommend this to any superhero comics fan, and particularly Superman fans out there. This is a fantastic story that is just as good upon reread, and I know I will reread it again and again in the years to come. Have you read Superman Birthright? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to check out that channel sponsor. And that's going to do it today for Superman Birthright. Thank you so much for watching the Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to leave that like and comment, and until next time, have a good one.